Disney is failing. It almost seems as if Disney is doomed to fail at this point. Hi, I'm Laura from Your Little Sisters Productions, and I love to talk about movies, TV shows, and all things storytelling. It's no secret that their recent projects have not been going as well as their past projects, but Disney has been able to make a good amount of money off of some of their live action remakes of their animated films, such as The Lion King and Aladdin, which brought over $1 billion when they were in theaters. Yes, there have been some remakes which have been flops, but more often than not, they make some sort of revenue from them, which is crucial for them right now. Disney is losing money, losing around 900 million at the box office this year alone. This can be due to several factors, including higher budget films, meaning they need to make more money at the box office to make their money back, and poor reception and reviews of their films, which leads to less people buying their tickets. While some movies may look like they made a profit because they made more than the budget of making the film, we have to take into account the money they spend on marketing and advertising. To make a profit, you need to make 2.5 times the budget. But Disney isn't just losing in the box office. Their streaming service, Disney Plus, is costing them more money than they're making from it. Disney Plus, which has been around since the end of 2019, has not made them any profit in the last 4 years. According to the Los Angeles Times, Disney lost $887 million on the streaming service during the fiscal second quarter in 2022. And in 2023, also during the second fiscal quarter, they reported a loss of 659 million. And now, Disney is in a class action lawsuit brought on by the stockholders who claim that Disney intentionally misled them in terms of streaming services success and profitability. With all of this happening, Disney really needs something to make them a boatload of money, and soon, especially with Bob Iger, the CEO, talking about selling off some assets and laying off thousands of employees to keep the company afloat. So, why in the world is their lead for their live action Snow White saying outrageous comments in her promotional interviews? And why do they exclude actors with dwarfism from their movie about one of the most famous fairy tales of all time? Aside from one, that is. Look, I'm sure by now that we have all heard the sound bites and seen the clips of things Rachel Zegler has said about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and the new live action Snow White. I'm not here to inform you of her comments, more so to go through and debunk them. During an interview with Gal Gadot, right after Gal had finished speaking about how amazing it was to be part of a remake of such a classic and industry leading defining film, Rachel revealed this.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Like, I'm being so serious. I watched it once and then I went on the ride in Disney World, which was called Snow White's Scary Adventures. Doesn't sound like something a little kid would like. Was terrified of it. Never revisited Snow White again. So I watched it for the first time in probably 16, 17 years when I was doing this film.
Now, I'm not here to say that she wasn't scared or even that she had no right to be scared. We all get scared of different things. I'm not here to make fun of her fears or say she's wrong for being scared of the movie or the ride. What I am here to say is this: she didn't seem to be reading the room very well. Gal Gadot had just finished giving a lovely speech proclaiming her enthusiasm to play such an iconic character in the remake of such an infamous piece of film history, and Rachel immediately goes, "Yeah, I was scared of it and never watched it again until I got cast for this film over a decade later." And I don't think the ride that they made is good or fun for little kids because I didn't like it. Honestly, that part just comes off as insulting to Disney and all the people who worked on developing the ride and the original film. Just because you don't enjoy something doesn't mean other people don't. I don't like eating onions, but I acknowledge that there are many people who do. I don't say that because I don't enjoy it, no one else will, which is how her comment came off, especially with her incredulous tone and slightly confused facial expression. Her comments were awkwardly timed and to many people came off as ungrateful for the original, without which the live action remake wouldn't exist, and she wouldn't have the opportunity to play the Disney princess Snow White. Her facial expressions and tone made it seem as if she had little to no respect for the source material, and was particularly jarring to hear in between Gal Gadot's praising of the original film and praising the cast and crew they got to work with. Maybe instead she could have said that when she was young, parts of the movie scared her. But when she revisited it when she was older, she saw the beauty and fun and charm the film offered, and it helped her be even more excited to play her in the live action. Maybe she could have steered clear of mentioning being scared at all and just stuck to the parts of it she did like. Instead, she makes the time to mention her negative reaction to the movie and its ride, not really instilling confidence in the audience that she understands the story or the character.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Disney's live action Snow White is not the first movie version of the Snow White fairy tale to have her be more leadership focused or not be saved by the prince, which I will get into here in a minute because, oh boy, do I have thoughts on this statement. So, this over focus on making sure that people know she isn't focused on love, she wants to be a leader and she learns lessons and saves herself, as if this is the first movie to do so, or the first movie to do so with this character, is weird. It also shows a lack of understanding of the original movies in many ways. First of all, Rachel claims that because the film was made in 1937, it had backward ideas of women in power. But the leader we see throughout the entire film is a woman. Her stepmother is in charge of the entire kingdom. She is the only ruler. She is the queen. She has no king by her side. She's the one in charge, the head honcho, the top of the top. There is no authority above her in the land. So, what backwards ideas of women in power is she talking about? The fact that the queen was ruled by envy and willing to kill anyone who got in her way? She's still in power. No one questions her because she's a woman at any time in the film. And Snow White is going to marry the prince and join him at his castle and, presumably, reign by his side as the queen, albeit a more compassionate and caring queen than her predecessor. So far, I'm not seeing any backwards or outdated ideas about women in power. She and Gal Gadot both go on to say that Snow White is not going to be saved by the prince, which why does everyone think that all the Disney princesses are powerless and helpless little creatures waiting around for a big, strong man to come along and save them, and that they contribute nothing to their happy endings other than being pretty? Okay. Does the prince come in at the end of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and kiss her while believing her to be dead as a way to say goodbye? Yes. Does that kiss wake her up from the sleeping death? Yes. Does that mean that she did nothing to save herself? No. Let's break this part down. The only antidote to the sleeping death poison the queen gives Snow White is love's first kiss. The queen reads that in her spell book and then laughs at the ridiculousness of it. Because even though she is aware of the prince and his love for Snow White, she firmly believes that the dwarves will bury Snow alive. She finds an evil sort of glee in the thought of her being buried alive, with the antidote being so near and yet impossible to attain. But the dwarfs don't bury Snow White. They loved her so much, and she looked so beautiful and peaceful that they couldn't bring themselves to do it. Instead, they built her a coffin made of glass and gold and kept vigil by her side for an entire year. If Snow White hadn't been so kind, so nurturing, so loving to them, and created that bond, they probably would have buried her, thus ending her chances of ever waking up. She did that. She befriended them and she took care of them to the degree that they loved her enough to keep her in a glass coffin above ground and watch over her, not knowing that she would one day wake up. Now, about the prince. He was riding along on his horse when he heard a beautiful singing voice, and he crossed the wall to see who was singing and fell in love at first sight. You know, that thing that happens in fantastical fairy tales. He saw how beautiful, how kind, and how good she was. Yes, she does run away at first, which sparks him serenading her. But she runs away out of embarrassment of wearing rags, not because she thought he was creepy or dangerous. She kisses a dove and sends that dove down to pass the kiss on, showing that she also feels the same for him. And she thinks about him often throughout the movie. True love at first sight only happens in fairy tales to those who are good and worthy of it. Villains don't get love at first sight because they are evil. But those who are good and stay strong even through difficult times get rewarded with true love, a love that will never fade or falter, and a happily ever after ending. Snow White grew up in a very abusive environment, yet she maintained her cheery disposition and positive outlook on life. She was so kind that forest animals immediately took to her and led her to the dwarf's cottage. She was hardworking, willing to clean and cook and look after the dwarfs in exchange for staying at their cottage. If she was mean or unkind or villainous, she wouldn't have found true love with the kind prince, and his kiss would have been nothing more than what he initially thought it was, a goodbye kiss. Instead, it wakes her up. Because she stayed true and compassionate even through difficult times, she had a true love who was able to free her from the curse. And that doesn't take away anything from her strength as a character. If anything, it adds to it. The dwarf's devotion and the love she finds with the prince are a testament to how wonderful and resilient a person she is. In the end, good doesn't just triumph over evil, good gets to be happy forevermore while evil fades away.
I know that you've told me before that your version of Snow White is different and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird, weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
So no Prince or a different kind of Prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because like we cast a guy in the movie,
Right.
Andrew Burnap, great dude. It's it's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby. But it's one of those things.
So true,
It's
yeah.
an inner journey that she goes on to find her true self, and she meets a lot of people along the way that make the journey really incredible.
No, just no. The story doesn't spend too much time on her love story, nor is the prince, who only shows up in two scenes, a stalker. Her love story is an integral part of her journey. Finding something safe and good outside of the abuse she suffered at the hands of her stepmother is a positive thing, and love is beautiful. Love is the driving force behind many wonderful stories, artworks, books, songs, poems, lives. It is a driving force that keeps us going day after day. I find it a little ironic that Rachel Zegler had no problem starring in West Side Story, which is a reinterpretation of Romeo and Juliet, where the entire plot of the movie hinges on her character falling in love with someone she's not supposed to. But now she has a problem with a fairy tale princess finding love. Also, it was very rude to even jokingly suggest that your co-star Andrew scenes might all get cut. First of all, you are not the director or the producer. You don't have that power. And secondly, how disrespectful is that to undercut his character's role in the story simply because he is the man and, in your words, the perceived love interest, which is apparently bad? It just came off as very arrogant and not very supportive of your fellow actor. I'm sure he was just as excited as everyone else to be cast in a mega Disney remake and add it to his resume. And I hope for his sake that he is not cut from the movie. Because how sad would that be? But enough about Rachel Zegler and her comments. Another major controversy surrounding the live action remake goes all the way back to when Peter Dinklage went on a podcast and said, quote, "Take a step back and look at what you're doing there. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, and you're still making that beep backward story about seven dwarves living in a cave together. What the beep are you doing, man? Have I done nothing to advance the cause from my soapbox? I guess I'm not loud enough." Okay, as stated above, earlier in my video, the dwarves did not live in a cave. They lived in a very nice cottage. Also, the dwarfs in the story are fictional beings of fantasy, similar to elves and fairies and witches, etc. There is some speculation that the idea for this fantasy race came from real people with dwarfism, and that may well be how it started, but they got their own mythos and background as time went on in various countries. Dwarves in fantasy are known as fierce warriors and expert miners and blacksmiths, a brave and noble people. Fantasy dwarves, as we know them today and for many decades back, are looked at positively. And the dwarfs in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs are no different. They share the title with the princess in the title of the movie. They are in the movie more than the prince and the evil queen. They light up the screen, especially Dopey, who is my personal favorite. They chase down the evil queen, which leads to her death, and they keep Snow White safe for a year, which leads to her being able to have her happily ever after. They are heroes and beloved characters, and Disney deciding not to cast actors with dwarfism in these roles is honestly just sad.
So it's not a progression at all to me. My issue with it is exactly what you said. There are actors, dwarf actors, that that dream to be in a major motion picture such as this Disney remake. And now, because Peter Dinklage uh, said what he said last year, now it's taken away, and it's taken away because of quote unquote progression and all of that. And that's it's not really it's not right.
According to the set pictures that came out earlier this year, which featured the stand ins for the actors in the movie, only one actor has dwarfism, while the rest appear to be average sized. And the seven dwarfs are removed from the title of the film. They didn't even put Snow White and the seven magical creatures or seven magical persons. They just put Snow White, nothing else, because they don't understand the significance of their own characters in their first ever full length animated film that kickstarted their entire studio. Which is why they are able to have the jobs they have now and make the movies that they're making now. Not casting seven actors with dwarfism as the seven dwarfs is taking away so many opportunities from people in that community. They already have so few chances, as Peter Dinklage very well knows. He himself has played mythical dwarves and other parts specified for people with his height many times. But now it's insulting and backwards. It's easy for him to say, as an already very well established and respected actor. But what about others looking for an opportunity? What happened to holding out your hand and helping others up? This movie was a great opportunity for people in his own community to be seen, to have an acting or a stunt person or stand in credit to their name, to have their talent seen around the world. But now it's gone. Of course, Peter Dinklage cannot take all the blame for this. Ultimately, Disney made the decision not to include the dwarfs, and his comments seem to be either the catalyst for that decision or the catalyst for them to announce their decision in a way they thought would be the least offensive. Because at this point, after so many disappointing remakes, it wouldn't surprise me that they chose to remove pivotal titular characters long before Peter Dinklage said anything. Oh, and one last thing.
If I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
I'm sure that the people who are hired by the parks to dress up as the Disney characters would love to get paid millions of dollars for their portrayal of princesses and wearing dresses day after day for months or even years on end through all sorts of weather conditions. Saying that because she had to wear a princess dress for 18 hours a day as the reason she deserves more money, doesn't come off very well when there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people who work on movies in some capacity, not making anywhere near the amount she has made from acting. Again, it just comes off weird. It made it seem as if she is self centered and not understanding the plights of others in the strikes. Whether or not you agree with the strikes, I don't believe that this outward attitude is the way to help the cause you are trying to promote. All in all, Snow White seems to be doomed. No dwarfs, no love story with the prince, and seemingly very little respect or understanding of the source material from the main actress. I can't say that all of this made me not want to see this movie, as I have been disappointed and disillusioned with the Disney live action remakes for a very long time now. But it hasn't helped me want to see it either. And based on what I've seen from the reaction online, people who are fans of the original or just fans of love stories and fairy tales in general are very upset by the changes that Disney has decided to make and the comments that Rachel Zegler has put out. I wonder how, if at all, Disney is going to try and recover the faith of the public in this project. Goodness knows they need a big turnaround and soon for their company to stay afloat. What do you think of the exclusion of the dwarfs and actors with dwarfism? What do you think about Rachel Zegler's comments? Are you going to watch this in theaters, wait for streaming, or skip it altogether? Let me know in the comments below, along with any other thoughts you have. Like if you like this video, subscribe to see more videos in the future, and I'll see you next time.